The Australian Curriculum Studies Association would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands and the waterways from where we are all meeting today. We pay our respects to the elders past and present, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. We value the contributions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to education and their continued support of the teaching and learning of all Australians. We recognise that for thousands of years, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been the first teachers, and that we are committed to continue our learning alongside them. Welcome everyone to AXA Insights, and following our AGM in the last few weeks, we have been delighted to introduce some new board members to our team. Now, we have already had a few conversations with Andrew, especially in the role with middle leadership, but it is wonderful to meet him today as a new board member of AXA and to discuss some of the wonderful things he's been up to. Now, to give Andrew a little bit of background on Andrew, he's been a teacher for over 30 years and was a primary school principal, having just stepped out of that role. We'll talk a little bit more about that soon. And he's written a book entitled Are You Ready for Primary School This Year, as well as some other books through Amber Press. These books aim to help parents understand how best to navigate the world of schools with practical advice, communication tips, and insights into how schools operate. He's also a very popular speaker, an MC, a mediator, a consultant, a facilitator of workshops on creating a culture of trust, collaboration, and inquiry between teachers and parents. And even just that little bit there, I think, is a good demonstration of our profession, of all the skill sets that we acquire over our time in education, and what we can do to support others, not within our education system as well, but those around us. I think it's very important. So, Andrew, wonderful to have you again. I think we're going to start off with a question that really is very important because we've just talked about our profession, but what were your personal motivations for getting into it?
Oh, Annie, you're asking me to think back 40 years. Now,
Wow, I know.
no, I think what got me into education was probably a desire to make the world a better place. And that's a very broad statement. However, the opportunity to have some influence and impact on young people's minds and their development was probably something that appealed to me. And hopefully I've been able to do that over the last, nearly 40 years in education. So, yeah, the desire to make the world a better place, influencing young people, and ultimately working with like-minded people who've got education as their priority and their focus, working with parents, and I know that can be a bit of a challenge, but it can also be one of the great joys of our job when you can be on the same page as parents.
Yes.
So that probably were some of the motivating factors. But that's a lifetime ago, Hannah. It's nearly 40 years since I started.
Yes. And often our motivations have changed. And I think we've just seen this morning the result of the teacher workforce surveys. And, one of those key things being the challenges with parents that a lot of teachers are facing and the demands that are coming with that, I think, and the nature of, you're talking 40 years and some in 25 years, where we started from and how the landscape was then as to where it is now, I think is something that, as educators, we have to keep up with, and we have to understand one another and how that goes. So, yeah, I think it's a really important part of that. Really, as you're saying, that parent communication is quite a big one. But we talk about a long career, and this is quite hard to pinpoint because I think we all come away. The reason why we're in education is those very moments where you can have the worst day in terms of administration or in something to do with an HR issue, but all it takes is that kindy child to give you something or tell you something highly inappropriate or something that just makes you laugh out loud, and it completely restructures our day. And how lucky we are to have that. So in this case, I just want to see, has there been something that you would think of as your greatest accomplishment so far?
Oh, and look, I've been privileged to work in a number of schools in Southeast Queensland, and some of my greatest, some of the things I'm most proud of, I was actually asked this question recently at my retirement function, and someone asked me that question. And it came down to getting the right people in the right jobs, which sounds unusual. However, as a principal for 24 years, I was responsible for obviously appointing a lot of staff into schools. Everything from creating new leadership teams, if my leadership teams have evolved over the years and people have moved on to other positions. So to create new leadership teams, then to create teams of people in teaching teams or learning support teams. Getting the right people in the right positions meant the right work could be done to have most impact. And that's something I'm most proud of, is to say I can look at my appointments over a long teaching and principal career and think I've got it right most of the time, I hope. And honestly, there's one or two appointments in hindsight you'd go, I didn't get that one right. However, the majority of the people that I appointed to leadership positions and teaching positions, I'm really proud of the work they've achieved in having an impact on their students through my appointment. So that's probably something I'm really proud of. And look, yes, I've written 3 books. I'm proud of having 3 books, and who knows what the future holds with those. I'm also hopeful that I've left all the schools that I was principal of in a better shape than when I started. Now, that's not to say they weren't in great shape when I started.
No,
Every principal has their own strengths, and I know what my strengths are as a principal, and I think if I can leave the schools that were where I was principal in better shape or in a better position than when I started, then I think I've done my job. So it's hard to reflect after 40 years, what I've achieved almost.
It is, and I think you've highlighted as well the altruistic nature of our profession. I think that our success comes from children succeeding and from our staff succeeding, and that gives us the greatest pleasure. And I think what you were saying there about, leaving something in a better place, I always often think, especially in leadership and education, you're like the kind of the Mary Poppins or, the kind of the Nanny McPhee, that the idea is that when you need someone the most, you're there, but when they're ready, you move away and you let them do what they want. And I think that's, I always have that image when I see, the kind of the real upset when someone leaves an organization, but actually what they've done is set that organization up for success, and their role is the next one. So I think that was a real kind of thing when you were talking there. For me, I thought yes. And I will say that our first conversation, I'm going to give you a little bit of a pep talk here for you, because I remember leaving that conversation and thinking, if that man offered me a job tomorrow, I would fly across to Queensland to work for him, because within that 10 minutes, I thought, this is a principal who actually is thinking of his staff first. And I know that I would be a better teacher or educator because someone like you was there. So if that helps you, that was certainly my impression within the first 10 minutes. So hopefully, I'm sure you've got hundreds more who've been in that situation. So we are at AXA. So the key word within that is curriculum. What do you think curriculum means?
And upon reflection, I think there's 2 parts to curriculum. There's obviously the curriculum that the Australian government sets. We've got a CARA, we've got the state curriculum bodies that go, look, this is what's to be taught, and many subjects have their own organisations as well, saying, we're the leading body for drama or health and phys ed or English or maths. So there's the curriculum that is set, and we should be teaching these things. I think there's also the hidden curriculum, which we sometimes talk about in schools, which is, in my language, I was thinking about this, I think it's the culture that we create and the opportunities for learning through either very tangible practices or very intangible relationships that create other learning experiences. So the curriculum is what we're teaching and what we're learning. And there's the set documents you must teach, this, this, and this. And then there's the other opportunities and experiences in schools, which I would call, and some people call it the hidden curriculum, to say we're still giving our students, and in some cases our staff, and in some cases parents, opportunities to learn through culture, experiences, relationships, all those sort of things. So I think curriculum's got 2 elements to it.
And that's a real hard dilemma for, I think, a lot of especially our young graduates going into schools.
Yes.
They've got a lot of prescriptive things that they have to do. You know, they've got to teach a curriculum. They have to teach it the way, you know, kind of a lot of schools will have a very specific way they would like it teach, especially when we look at pedagogical approaches. Yep. But similarly, on top of that, we're also saying to them, make it innovative, cover these skills, you know, and develop that all yourself and add that all in. And as you're saying, that curriculum is not one linear pathway. We have got so many competing elements that enrich the curriculum. But it is very tricky. And I think that's one of the things I personally think there's, in order to keep our staff in the profession, and we're seeing that big issue, we need to provide that support early on, because we can't expect it just to be acquired and you just know it as well. Like, you know, it's hidden for a reason, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's not there. So I've just briefly mentioned a few, but I think this is an ongoing conversation, especially in light of the teacher workforce that's come out today. What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing in your role, and lots of different roles, that are facing our profession?
You've just mentioned a couple of them. So longevity of our staff, I think, is an issue, and whether or not young teachers, early career teachers. I've got to stop saying young, because I'm working for one of the universities at the moment. I've got a lot of mature age students, which is fantastic. So will our early career teachers see this profession as a career path for the next 20 or 30 years, like you and I have?
Yes.
Or will they say, I'm in it for 5 years and I'll see how I go? Yeah. So I think staff longevity is one aspect. I think the reality that AI brings to the world is something that education is going to grapple with, for our responsibilities for educating people around it.
Yes.
And B, what place will it have in the lives of our young people and our teenagers, and then into our universities, to say, well, you can use it to get information, but you can't use it when writing assignments. So I think there's a tension there for the use of AI. I think the relationships mean people need to get more skilled, and this sounds silly, but more skilled at communicating face to face.
Yes.
And we've got a generation of people who are coming into the profession who spend their life on devices. We're also educating our teachers through multiple platforms in this day and age. Frequently, they can be learning university online.
Yes.
And then going into a service industry, meeting people face to face. And I'm not sure whether they've always got the people skills to deal with some of those people issues.
Yes.
And I'm doing a little bit of tutoring now at one of our universities, and I'm doing an online course, and I'm about to teach a subject about professional communication. And I'm thinking, do our young people know how to interact with each other, with parents, with colleagues, when they may not actually have the practice of doing that, except when they go to placements during their course? So I think there's a few issues regarding that. The other thing about our challenging profession, Anna, is one of our challenges is everything gets put in the bundle of educators without anything being taken out.
Yes, yes.
So whenever anything new is introduced, whether it be technology or consent or financial responsibility, we'll get the schools to teach all of that without anything being taken out of the curriculum. And it's no wonder we've got teachers going, I don't have time to do everything. So what do we need to streamline and do brilliantly to set our students up for success? There's a few challenges.
There are, yes. And I think you've made some really good points. You know, we're certainly in that age of AI that's causing sort of pulling the rug up from underneath us. And you make a really good point about those language skills. Because I remember I taught a module online at a university, and it was kind of similar to talking into the abyss. You might have the 2 or 3 who are engaging, and that might be great. But because it was recorded, a lot of people just did it later, and that was it. And you kind of you missed that. And we've actually just started our series on oracy, and this came from looking at, I mean, I'm obviously hark back to sometimes the UK TV, and I was watching a BBC article about, you know, young children having that as part of their national curriculum, you know, the ability to speak, and oracy being a big part of it. And I think that will come especially into, you know, rather than it being an add-on to a literacy curriculum and speaking and listening, it should be at the forefront, because what we're looking at in terms of job applications is They're not asking if you have covered certain thing in a history or a geography paper. What they're asking for is your teamwork, your resilience, your ability to communicate with each other.
Correct.
And so, and although it's a skills based, that's probably something that our children do, as you're saying, or our students and our staff need to be able to have that skill. Because that's, at the end of the day, if they've got the job, that's because they have those skills.
Yes.
So, I think you've made some really, really good points in that space. And I also like the fact that and this is sort of into the next question about our graduate or early stage teachers, because I think sometimes we don't give credit to some of the early stage teachers who bring with them a real strong sense of what they've already been up to. I was talking to someone the day and found out that she was a pilot before she came into education. And, these are kind of these hidden skills that you go, oh, if I knew that, my goodness, that'd be wonderful. So really for you, what advice would you give to our early stage teachers?
A couple of things I'd say to early career teachers. One is listen and learn. Even though you're out of university, I often say to graduate teachers, you've come out of university, I expect you to have all the latest and greatest knowledge. The reality is you probably know just a little bit about the actual profession. So you're going to learn a whole lot when you hit the classroom and when those students are your responsibility for the first time. So listen and learn. That'll be the first thing I would say. I would say, if possible, attach yourself or find a good mentor so that you've got a reference point. And look, it could be someone on your teaching team. It could be someone within the school who knows the context of the school. It hasn't got to be. But you need a professional, critical friend with a little bit of experience to say, I know what you're going through. I can coach you through certain scenarios if you need it. So I think early career teachers need good mentors to say, here's how I can support you. It's your journey. I will happily listen. I will give you some advice if you need it, but happily listen and give those people advice. So I think they need to do that. And when I talked about learning communication skills, never underestimate the importance of having those conversations where you can practice dialogue and rehearse dialogue before you've got to go and have a conversation, particularly with parents and colleagues. Because I've had some very experienced colleagues goes, Andrew, I hate parent-teacher meetings. I hate talking in front of the parents at the start of a year. I'm going, but you've been teaching for 10 or 15 years. They said, I still do not enjoy it. I said, okay, you haven't got to enjoy it, but make sure you do it professionally and competently. So practice those skills. And even the best speakers in the world still practice those skills. So I think if they can get a good mentor, ask questions. The other thing is, and you mentioned it earlier, just before we came online, Anna, we want people to be innovative and to try things, even though things are prescriptive, a little bit. I think young teachers, in some ways, where they're not jaded through experience or through being put down or through 1,000 changes in curriculum, they can try things. And I think they should be encouraged to try things. I think they should be motivated and stimulated to say, I want to do this differently from how my colleagues are doing it. Is that okay? Well, it is okay, so long as you're covering the curriculum. So let's get in and try things. And if it is a success, great, duplicate it. If it's a failure, fine, you learn through it. So I think, we've got to give our young teachers or our less experienced teachers the encouragement to say, have a go, try it. I haven't done it in my teaching career, but you might make it work. So great.
Definitely. 100%. And I think it's interesting because, you and I come from quite large, vast states, and we often see our graduates or, our early career teachers going out to kind of remote and rural areas where they start off as a kindy teacher, but they then have a class of K to 5 or whatever it is. And, they have these huge, kind of ranges, and they have to fill that. And on top of the fact that they think they know what they're doing, you might then have to be on the maths committee. You might also have to do the network for the science. And, it's quite a lot of responsibility for a graduate. And that's just due to staffing. It's due to location. But they develop a very different skill set for the ones who may have come in a metropolitan area. And even when you're talking about the parents, the relationships you have to build, say, in a regional or rural area with parents can vary considerably to, maybe a leafy green school where they have very determined viewpoints on where their child is going. And that for me was really important because I think graduates need to call out and say, I'm not comfortable going into this meeting, or I'd really appreciate you coming in to help support me in this meeting, because it's not a good space if you really feel off guard. And I think, you can, and I think for a lot of young people, just some of the really basics of having someone just to interject and give you that time to, I've got a bit of thinking time for the next part. So yeah, that's, I think, the way you've talked about that, because I think that's really crucial. I don't think that's another part of our teaching profession that's just an add-on. Oh yes, you've got to do that as well.
Yeah.
You've got that to do. Sorry, whoops, we're having a parent meeting next week. And especially you think for when you think about all the children who are on individual education plans, or we're looking at diagnoses. If you're a graduate teacher, my goodness, you can't know everything. You certainly don't know about a lot of the complexity. So yeah, I think that is a real key takeaway for me was, get yourself a mentor and ask for help, really. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And even experienced teachers don't have all the answers. Like experienced teachers are still learning day by day, week by week. So I often say to early career teachers, tell parents or tell your colleagues you don't know the answers, but you'll find the answers. Go away, source the wisdom of colleagues or research and say, I'll get back to you within 48 hours or a week or whatever it is to come back with an answer. So I think it's really important if early career teachers can ask questions, admit their limitations and go, I'm still learning. We all are still learning. So that will hold them in good stead. And it'll actually give the parents some confidence. I think even though they might not have all the answers, parents will go, no, but you're genuine in the fact that you're going to find an answer, but follow it up. Make sure you do follow it up.
Yes.
So.
And let's face it, our profession throws us curveballs every day. It's certainly not as straightforward. And when you're talking there, just those minutes there about those kind of parent communications, and you talked about as a speaker and going over and over and over again, actually rehearsing that script in your head. You then, even if something happens in that conversation where it's not going the way you planned, you can still refer back to your key elements and you stick by them. This is what I'm going to do. I'm consistent and this is what it is. And the majority of the time, I think parents understand that, rather than you over-promising things that you can't do, and your limitations, and having that, there is a script, I've got to keep going, being assertive, which is difficult. But we are moving forward, and it's lovely to think that we have a very positive, future-focused education system. And that's something that I think we also do need to hang on to. I think a lot of teachers know that some elements of the system are not effective and they like the change, but they are one person in a big system. But who do you think perhaps is on our watch list, or who is making waves in our sector that is going to really have an impact, or which groups even, or the news is telling them?
Let me start with an individual. I think Dr. Paul Browning. I think you met Paul.
And I think we've got a lovely podcast coming out in the next few weeks.
So I think Paul's work, and this is what appeals to me about Paul's work. There are lots of platforms now where people are using AI to produce lessons, and that's very, very much one element of our teaching profession. However, I think the work that Paul's doing with his platform Vividus is unique insofar as it covers almost the complete breadth of the teaching process, from planning and planning collaboratively. So I'll plan on the platform. However, my teaching colleagues in the same year level can also access my planning, and we can do it together collaboratively, which is important.
Sustainable model.
Absolutely. The program also then tracks the curriculums being taught. So whatever's listed in ACARA, or whatever's listed in whichever state you're in, and your curriculum is listed, Paul's program can use that curriculum and it can track what's being taught. Your leadership team have access to that planning and give you feedback, which is fantastic. That platform also allows tracking of data for our special needs students, so that when the Commonwealth Government asks for our NCCD data, you can actually say, I've made all these adjustments and this is what's been tracked for our students who are on the NCCD database, which is fantastic. So I think Paul's platform has got great appeal because it's almost a one-stop shop for planning, getting feedback from your colleagues, getting feedback from the leadership team, tracking data, tracking students. So that to me is a really valuable tool, which we need to start doing. The other thing is I've seen Paul demonstrate this tool, and for what would take me an hour to plan a few units or a few lessons in a unit, Paul will be doing it probably a fifth or a sixth of the time.
Yes.
So if we want to give time back to our teachers to say, get in and be practitioners in actually working with students and being able to provide in-time feedback for our students, then if we can minimise the paper chase and the paperwork, which, let's be honest, doesn't always get read and doesn't always provide feedback from our leadership teams, then I think we're onto a good thing. So if people want to see Paul Browning's work in Vividus, I think that's something worth considering.
Yes, and I mean, when I sort of met with Paul and through your recommendation, what was really interesting was the role of AI and how it was being used effectively, and the reasoning behind what he was doing. And I think that is a big concern we're seeing with a lot of teachers, is they're desperately wanting to use AI. And as I think Gary Steger, we had on before, talked about, the reason people want to use it is to get rid of the administration work, which is true. That's if essentially what we want to do. But we're seeing a lot of misuse of AI, not from intentional misuse, genuinely a lack of understanding. And, we're seeing huge amounts of data being put into an AI model, and the intellectual property of students and of staff as well being compromised. So I think you're right in that something like the Vividus has created a model which uses the AI model. However, it is contextual. It's not come from overseas. We haven't bought a product from overseas. We haven't got a product in that sense that is right for our curriculum and our needs currently, which is wonderful. Yeah, so I was quite impressed with that, and especially the links to the University of Melbourne and their metrics program and what's happening in that space is very exciting in terms of what we are assessing and along the way. So yes, this has been some quite exciting things, and I know we've had you on before about some of the things, but I was really hoping, what are your plans for the future? Where would you like to see yourself? I know you just come out being a principalship, so it's probably a bit of a minefield right now, and you're probably buzzing with ideas. But is there?
Can I give you an update since we last spoke?
Yes, please do.
Since we last spoke. So I'm fortunate that I am doing some tutoring at the Australian Catholic University a couple of nights a week, and I'll be teaching a subject coming up at the end of the year, which is very exciting, and I'm enjoying the world of academia and having some influence over our early career teachers, which is great. I'm doing some relief teaching, which means I'm back in the game, which is great to actually be back in classrooms. But I'm in two very different schools. So I'm in an all-boys P-12 college occasionally in one of Brisbane's elite boys' schools, which is great experience when I'm looking at young men who are shirts in, socks up, very much managed beautifully to produce some fine young men. But I'm also working in a hospital school. So here in Brisbane, we've got a number of schools that operate from in a hospital to support either sick children or the siblings of sick children who've moved to be relocated for treatment for one of their children. So I have the privilege of being a relief teacher in the hospital school, and I get to go and either work in a ward one-on-one with students, or I get to go and take a class of anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9 students, which is fascinating to see why you get back into teaching and why we started teaching in the first place, about to make a positive influence. So those two things are keeping me busy while I'm still writing a program around managing psychosocial hazards for Viva Health at Work. So Dr. Sarah Pazel I work with in writing this program around managing psychosocial hazards, which is a huge issue, not just in education, but in many industries, about how do we manage our stresses and how do we recognise the signs and how do we mitigate and minimise those. So those 3 projects are keeping me busy while doing training in 6 team conditions, which is what I was doing just before I spoke with you this morning. So 6 team conditions is a program, came out of America, Harvard, Yale and MIT. And it's called 6 team conditions because there are 6 essential conditions for highly effective teams. And there are 3 essential conditions, and there are 3 enabling conditions for highly effective teams, hence 6 team conditions. And I'm trying to think through how we can apply this into the world of education, because we have multiple uses of the term teams in education sectors. We have leadership teams, we have support teams, we have teaching teams. And I'm thinking, okay, which of those teams are legitimate teams that have the three essential elements and the three enabling elements, or are they just groups of people who are answerable to the head person? Do they have a compelling purpose, which is one of the essential elements of a team? So, yeah, Six Team Conditions is a fascinating platform, which I'd be encouraging schools to look at or to touch base with me through you to say, let's learn more about it. So, yeah, my ultimate goal is to support schools. If you ask me the question in simple language, my ultimate goal is to support schools. Hopefully, through my experience, I can add value to the conversations around various things which schools have to do at the moment.
And it's really interesting knowing about your psychosocial hazards, because, my husband and I had this very same conversation last night with our children. And I said, and it was a very simple discussion with my son about holiday versus school, cricket training, or whatever I think it was about sports training. And does he have to do training in order to make a team, or does he prioritize family? And I said to my husband, I said, we need to demonstrate and we need to show to our young people how to do that. And we don't do that well in our profession. We stay late till 10 o'clock at night and get home. We get in early. We don't have that time. And then our holidays are spent working. So we're saying this, and the actual impact is not on our colleagues, it's on our students who are sitting there seeing that and thinking that's the norm. And they're not seeing it just from us, they're seeing it from their parents. So I think you're so right in that there is still a huge area where actually psychosocial isn't just on ourselves, it's what we're doing to others along the process as well.
Absolutely, Anna. Very, very true.
Now, last question, and I have actually had this conversation before, so I'm going to expand it a bit as well, because you can talk about your favorite teacher, and I'm sure there's probably been many of your career, but also it could also be, your favorite educator you've worked with, or the favorite person who's really inspired you, or, and you might not have even met them yourself. It was just something that really inspired you. So who is your favorite person in education so far?
See, now when you say education, Anna, it's occurred to me that education is so broad, from early childhood through to tertiary, through to anybody you meet who you learn things through. So education is so broad. However, let me give you a name. Alan Parker is a mentor of mine, and Alan is a behavioural scientist. He's a linguist. He's an extraordinary man. And I first met Alan back in 2015, I think. I did a masterclass under Alan. And then I ended up doing a graduate certificate in negotiation under Alan's leadership. So Alan's an extraordinary man who does negotiations worldwide. And he has reminded me on a few occasions that every human interaction is a negotiation, the way we communicate with people. He has taught at all levels of education. I think certainly from high school into secondary education, I think he's influenced, and I know he's done PDs in early childhood settings and in primary schools. So Alan Parker, his business is Peak Performance. He's an extraordinary man who has been a great motivator and inspiration for me to continue the journey of working with people, hopefully to make the world a better place.
Wonderful. And what a lovely idea, like a negotiator. I love that, because I was actually reflecting on this the other day, because I was walking past a school, and when you're not in a school, the sound of playground duty is like just beautiful, isn't it? You can walk past and you think it's wonderful. When you're on duty in the school, it is probably one of the most terrible parts of your day, and I was thinking, why is that? And I thought it's because you're a constant negotiator, because you're just dealing with that. You're also pretty much a battlefield medic, because you see things you don't want to see. Along the way of all of these kind of things you're trying to do, and you think, wow, I've got to the end of 20 minutes of recess and I'm exhausted. You know what I mean? And I've cleaned up knees, I've taken people off the trees, I've pulled people apart and all those things. So the idea, when you're talking about negotiation, we forget how much we do it every single day. Every day, even negotiating conversations. So that's a beautiful way to end on. Thank you so much, Andrew. So, Andrew, it would be wonderful. We are going to put lots of things in the conversation about all those people you have mentioned. And obviously, we are thrilled to have you on board at AXA and to be able to help flourish and move our organisation forward with some of your wonderful insights that you have for us. So thank you very much, Andrew.
Thanks, Anna. Lovely to chat as always.